Hi guys, welcome back. Sandy here again to bring you another tutorial video on modding in 7 Days to Die. If you've seen any of my previous ones, if you've not seen any of them, it's probably best to go back and have a look at those first, because that gives you a brief introduction of the things you'll need to do before you get to this stage. So what I'm going to be doing today is I've had a lot of requests and sort of comments saying things like, I'm trying to make this sort of block, what do I need to change, or, is this type of block possible, or, I really loved your tutorial videos, can you show us some more advanced techniques sort of thing. So that's what I'm aiming to do. I say aiming because, one, I don't consider myself the best teacher. Simple as that. I don't profess to be an expert at this, it's just a hobby of mine. Secondly, it's quite difficult to explain, and a lot of it's based on sort of trial and error. But I'm going to endeavour to do my best to put a good enough explanation across so you can at least get started and have a sort of practice go at doing this sort of thing. Okay? So as you can see, we've got open the blocks XML file. So what I'm going to be doing is teaching you how to make a simple custom block. So what we're going to be making is literally just a cube. A bit like my granite floor mod that you may have seen. Obviously I did a lot of shapes to go with it, but just the basic granite floor, I'm going to show you how to make a block that isn't currently in the game. So we're not just doing custom recipes for ones that already exist. You'll be making a block from scratch. Well, I say from scratch, the first step you want to do is you need to decide what block it is you're trying to make. Okay? It's a good idea to have an idea of the properties you want it to possess before you begin. Okay? So, for example, we want to make let's say my granite floor mod, okay? So what we want to do is we want to find a block in the XML file that's similar to the block we want to make. So let's say concrete, for example. So what we do is actually reinforced wood will be good enough. So it's a square block, so I'm going to show you what to do once you've got. So we copy and paste it, and at this stage you would scroll to the very bottom and paste it just above this final string of code. That just says blocks. Okay, that has to stay at the bottom, that's what encloses the entire file. So what you're doing is adding just above that, so this bit still remains at the bottom. Okay? The first thing you want to do is you want to address the name and the block ID. Suppose you've just copied a block, you've essentially just duplicated it in the file, so it will cause issues. Okay? The first thing you want to change is the block ID. But as you can see, the block ID, the last block ID in the file, is 1440. So as long as we pick a number bigger than that, it shouldn't cause any issues. So we're going to call it 1441. Okay? Very simple. Now the next thing we're going to address is the name. Okay? So, like I said, we're going to be making the granite floor block. So, that's what we'll call it. Now it's important to note that without using an asset extractor to modify a text file that's in the game, what is written here will be the name of your block in game. Okay, so something like this, chain link fence top pole 2, that's how it's characterized within the file. That may not be how it appears in game, because like I say, the text file in the assets file allows the fun pimps to change this. Okay, we don't have access to that file. I'm not doing this sort of simple modding anyway. So what you name it here will be what appears in game. So I'm happy with that. Granite floor. Okay. Now, the first thing to note is that the bulk of the code underneath is made of these property values. Okay, and there's only one other one, and that is a drop value. I'll explain the difference when I get to it. The properties are literally exactly how they sound. They affect the properties of the block you're making. Okay, so in this example for granite floor, the first property we come across is the material property. Now, you never change these name values because these are the properties you want. All you want to do is change the value. Okay, you can add and delete properties as necessary, but you must delete the entire string of code. So say we didn't want, well, I'll show you this now. We don't want this block to upgrade or downgrade into another block. Okay, so we don't want it to downgrade into old wood, so we'll delete that. It doesn't matter if it all lines up, it just makes it easier to read. So it doesn't matter if you've got any spaces or anything like that, as long as each property is surrounded by the triangular brackets. It's not a problem. We also don't want the block to be upgradable, so we can get rid of the upgrade block and the subsequent properties beneath it. You can tell this because of the way they're indented. Okay, and enclosed by this. The way you can tell where... Let's try and explain this. The strings of code are always go from an open triangular bracket and a closed triangular bracket with this forward slash denoting that that is the end of that particular string. It always goes from an open triangular bracket to a closed triangular bracket preceded by the slash. So as you can see at the top here, we've got the open bracket, but at the end of the string we don't have the slash. And that's because this is denoting the entire block. These are all sub-properties within the block. So as you can see, this code here, with the slash included, closes the block. So this always has to remain at the bottom, and this always has to remain at the top. All the properties and drops have to sit between them. Same for this bit with the upgrade block. The first line doesn't have the slash to close it, which means it ends with this piece of code here. So all these are included within this piece of code, and that's why they're inset, just to make it a little easier for you to see. And as you can see, all the individual ones have the closing backslash. But we don't want any of this, because we don't want the block to upgrade. This is something you can choose to add. It's a little more advanced, there's more things to change, so I'll cover it in a future episode. So for now, we need to get rid of the property upgrade, toBlock item, item count, upgrade hit count, and the closing brackets property there. So we don't need any of that. Okay. The next thing I want to tell you about is how to adjust the shape. Okay, the default shape is a cube. Okay, in order to make it any other shape, you need to change. You need to add in another string. Okay, that string is this one here, property name shape, and then its value. Okay, but because we're making a cube, we don't actually need that at all. So it's redundant. So we're not going to add it into our block here. Okay, but this is my actual granite block modded file. As you can see, I have added granite ramps. So as you can see, I've added this string, the shape string, with a value wedged to make it a ramp. Now it's up to you to go through the blocks file and find out what all the different shapes are. A good guide is my granite mod pack. There are 26 block shapes in there, and those are the main ones that you'll ever work with. There are some other specialist ones, but you won't be able to use those in a lot of cases. There's only a few changes you can make with it. Okay, so we've established that we're making a cube, so we don't need to adjust that property. That's a default. The next thing we want to change is, because we're making a granite floor, we want to make sure that it is imbued with the properties of the material it's made of to the best we can. So the first property we have in here is this one, property material. Okay. Basically, again, it's another one of those where you've got to go through and just learn what materials make up what. Okay. So in the case where we copied reinforced wood for the block, it appears as wood plus wood. Okay, a regular wooden block is simply made of wood on its own. If you upgrade it to the full reinforced metal wooden block, it will be wood plus metal. However, we don't want it to be made of wood at all. In this case, we want it to be made of stone. So obviously granite is a naturally occurring stone. As you can see, it gives you suggestions down here to make sure you're putting the right things in. Normally you just copy and paste just to make sure you get it bang on right, to reduce the chance of getting any errors. Okay? So that means that what that actually does is it affects the strength of the block, like how many hits it takes to break, which tools are effective against it. So in effect we've made, instead of the axe being effective against it, we've made a pickaxe effective against it, because we've changed it from wood to stone. Okay. It also affects the animation that plays when the block is destroyed. Obviously when wood is destroyed, it drops like splinters, and when stone's destroyed, it drops little bits of rubble, just as an animation. And that affects that as well. That's linked with this property. And the final thing it does is it affects the sound. So when you hit it, it will sound like you're hitting stone. If you set the value to wood, it will sound like you're hitting wood. Those sounds are attributed to these values. So that's basically how you change the material and the strength of the material. Okay, the next property that we have here is texture. This changes the appearance of the block. This is probably the thing you'll be most concerned with. Now again, it's one of those things, all it says is a number. This number, it's nothing to do with the block IDs or anything like that. It's literally just a number in a different file off in the assets files that has a texture associated to it. Okay? So, in this case, the upgraded wood has the value of 379. We don't want that because we're making a granite block. There are in excess of 450 different textures. Not quite sure how many in total. Actually, 415 different textures. There are loads. Not all of them will apply to all blocks, and again, that's something I'll cover in a more advanced video. Typically, if you're making a custom block, you want to use a texture that you know appears on not necessarily a full cube, but on a flat surface. A flat square surface. So, in this example that I've chosen, the granite floor, the texture comes from the cabinet, the redwood cabinet. So if I search for a cabinet, we should be able to find the value of the texture that we need. We don't want filing cabinet, we don't want old cabinet. Okay, right, so cabinet filler. This is the upgraded, not the upgraded, this is a version of the redwood cabinet. It's the one that doesn't open. So it's like it says, it's a filler block. As you'll see, it has this whole string of different textures. Okay. The one we're interested in is the granite texture. Okay, and this is denoted by the one that's different. Because we know that 5 sides of this block are simple redwood, and the top piece is the only bit that's granite. So we know that the texture value for granite is 261. So all you have to do is transfer this number to your new block. Just simply replace the number that's there already. And that's it. You've now assigned a different texture to the block. Now the next thing we want to add is some code that tells you what happens when the block is both destroyed and when it falls. So if we look at this chain link fence block above, you'll see it has 2 drop instead of property strings. Okay, now these control events, destroy and fall. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy these into our granite floor block so we have both. And then we're going to adjust the properties to fit the block that we're using. Okay, so as you can see, we're taking it off that chain link fence. So when it's destroyed, what that means is when you hit it with an axe, break it down, or when the zombies hit it and destroy the block, it drops scrap iron. Okay, that's no good. We've got a block made of granite, so we want to change that. So I want it to drop destroyed stone. So all we do is we either find a block that has destroyed stone in it, or, because I know what it's called, you can start typing in and it'll give you the option. We want destroyed stone. You can also edit how many it drops. So if you've made a particularly expensive block, you can make it drop, say, more than 1. It has a very high material cost. But in this case, 1 is sufficient. Same for the other one. The other one is what happens when it falls. So again, we want it to drop destroyed stone rather than a metal pile. Again, we can adjust the count if we want to, but this one also has a couple of other properties attached to it. First one is probability. That affects how often the item, the block that's dropped appears. You know, you could set it to say 0.75 and it would only occur 75% of the time. And the other one is stick chance. And what this controls, is when you collapse stone or something, and it drops the destroyed stone, you'll see that a lot of it sort of replaces itself as a block and sticks to the floor, and you have to dig it up again. This is what this chance controls. So obviously now it's set to 0.75 or 75%. Between 75% of the blocks that drop will turn into a placed version of that block. Okay, that's all that simply means, and you can adjust this or get rid of it or whatever you want to do. So in this case, those statistics are fine for me. Now there are a couple of other things I want to add to the granite floor to make it complete. Firstly, we want to add a group string. So I'm just going to copy that in now. Remember, you always want to put, doesn't really matter what order they go in, just so long as they all fall between the first line and the very last closing block line. I'm going to paste it in there with the other properties. And what this does is it sets, when you open the inventory in game and you go to search for the blocks or items that you want to choose, you'll notice that there's like a list and you can go through it at the side. There's different options. These values, like decor and building, that just tells you which block, which one of these options in that list your block will fall under. You know, you don't have to put it in there at all. In the case of the granite floor, I normally wouldn't because there's so many of them. You don't want it really cluttering up those lists. Doesn't affect, you know, if you were to type in the search bar, it will always appear, even if you don't have this string. All it does is add that to the list. So you know you have basics at the top, and then there's like a wooden club, a campfire, stone axe, those sorts of things. This is the string that affects where those items show up in that list. So we'll leave that in for now. We'll leave it under decor. It's a decorative block. Now the other thing we want to add is custom icon. Is this fine? Now, because you've created a new block, you've changed the name, you've given it a new block ID. The original block you copied no longer has an item and an icon attributed to it. This is done in an assets file that we can't affect. So whenever you make a new block, it will not have an icon. You've effectively removed it by renaming the block. So if we add it in again, it doesn't really matter where, as long as it's in between the top and bottom lines. We add this string, the custom icon string. What this does is it allows you to choose the icon from an existing icon in the game off a different block and apply it to your block. So in this case, I've gone for concrete. It's a square, it's roughly the right colour. And what you do is you simply grab the name. So you wanted it to appear as a chain link top corner, whatever the icon is for that. We paste that in there, and that's the icon we get. Okay. Unfortunately, within the blocks XML, there is no way to change the colour of this icon or add your own custom one. There is a string of code custom icon tint. However, this will only work in the items XML file. I don't know why, it seems silly, but that string only works on items. So say you wanted to, like my minigun mod, okay, you wanted to, you'd add the custom icon for all the parts, and you can change them to a different colour. I think I used pink for the minigun, so it looks different from, you know, auger parts. It appears pink. So yeah, that's how you use that to sort of create your own interesting sort of blocks. Some of them are quite vague. You know, if you use your imagination, you can use these tints to make things look, you know, reasonably like what you want them to look like. So yeah, that there is a completed granite block. Okay, it has the correct texture, it has an icon associated to it, it has the correct material. When we destroy it, it will drop the correct materials and the amounts that we want, and it will also appear in the inventory menus where we want it to. And that's literally it. That's the basics of creating a custom block. Like I said, there are a hell of a lot more properties in the file, because there are a lot of very different sort of blocks. But just for making your very simple square cube blocks, this is really all you need. You're more than welcome to use any of my mods as examples, my custom code, fiddle with it yourselves, go right ahead. But yeah, it's just a case of really sort of spending some time going through, looking what different materials there are, what different shapes there are, and coming up with your own designs. Experimenting with what textures there are. It's just a case of really trial and error. You know, things may not always work out the way you want. but don't be put off by it. There's usually a way to get around things. Try hard enough. So yeah, that's the fundamentals of making a square block. And like I said, if you want it to change shape, say you wanted to make a ramp, you just go through and find a ramp and copy its shape property string and paste that in as well. That would change the shape. So that's basically the essentials behind making custom blocks. I will be doing more videos showing you some of the more advanced things you can do. But for now, I think this is sufficient for you to at least get some practice. Just have a go yourselves. If you have any questions about what I've tried to explain, if I've not been clear on anything, feel free to drop a comment and ask. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. As I said, I'll be putting out more of these sort of tutorial videos for people who are interested in learning how to mod for themselves. So yeah, other than that, if you like the video, drop me a like. If you want to see more tutorial videos, more mods, subscribe. And yeah, have fun trying this out for yourselves, and I'll see you next time.